I know you are patiently waiting for Dangote Refinery to be listed on the stock market so that you can buy shares and earn in dollars. Now, what if I tell you there are other businesses that will determine the success of Dangote Refinery as far as the stock exchange is concerned? Now, these businesses, their success will be directly proportional to Dangote's refinery success. Just imagine what the shareholders or the stakeholders of these businesses will be making. Welcome to Clockwise. My name is Providence, and today we'll be exposing you to something very critical. I was told that in the era of the gold rush, people who are smart don't buy gold, but they sell shovel for those that are actually going after the gold. Now, these companies or these businesses will be so involved in the value chain of the Dangote Refinery. So as the Dangote Refinery succeed and pays its shareholders in dollars, these businesses also succeed. Now, we are bringing this information to you. Like I do it often, I'm here with a strategist, a stock market analyst, the one that sleeps on the charts and also deals on the fundamentals of these businesses. Now, with a resounding virtual round of applause, welcome again, my guest, Mr. Kanel. Welcome to Clockwise.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, welcome very much. You see, there is something that is very critical before we actually dive into today's conversation. Now, like the analogy I gave, in the era of the gold rush, everybody wants to get gold. People want to buy gold. People want to sell gold. But there are also smarter people who want to provide the instruments in making this gold available. And there are very few when it comes to that particular part. So that's the area we'll be discussing today. Those that will be making money or that will be making a lot from this IPO, from the success of Dangote's IPO. Now, but before then, let's talk about what happened to Airtel.
Okay.
Let's talk about Airtel first, because Airtel has been one of our picks during our conversation. Yeah. So let's just give an overview of what we're hearing and we'll move straight to the conversation.
Okay, so we published a video where we talked about the companies, some of the names of the stocks that you might want to look at for the year. And then Airtel Africa and MTN were actually the picks. So we have actually discussed about MTN in the previous podcast. So it's time for us to have a little touch on Airtel Africa. Incidentally, Airtel Africa just released its FY 2026. So the way it works is it's not like the normal calendar year. So Airtel Africa ends its financial year in what would be like the end of our first quarter or so. They just released their financials, and those financials look very good. It was such a good announcement especially for those of us who have invested. And of course, investors responded if you look at the charts itself. So for 2026, revenue actually kicked up.
Okay.
A lot, 29%.
We're not even up to half of the year.
No. So what I'm saying is that this is for the entire year.
Okay.
Yeah, so the year ends here. It ends. So this FY 2026.
For Airtel.
Yeah, for Airtel. It kicked up by 29%. I mean, they make their report because it's Airtel Africa. They report across different parts of the continent. So that number went up to $6.4 billion for Airtel Africa, which is 29.47%. Then even the operating profit was also very high, ticked up by 45.6%. This is a company that has been literally struggling. When I say struggling because remember for about over 10 years they were not able to actually scale up their earnings. But fortunately, I think last year or so, that tariff hike came in where they were able to charge more for the service they provided, which is why they have actually been, and that's one of the reasons why we mentioned that these companies, because of the 50% tariff hike, at least their margins will increase, and we have seen those in this number. That's why we mentioned Airtel and MTN at the start of this year. Their pre-tax profit actually rose by, you ready, 114.6%.
Okay. And
that got it up to $1.4 billion. And of course, even their profit after tax also was very huge, 813%.
The fundamentals are still strong.
very strong, and they are going to be way stronger. Remember, like I told you, companies that are coming out of a separation, in this case, separation in terms of how much they are earning power. Remember, when you have a fixed tariff, you cannot go above that.
Okay.
You know, it's more like a regulatory institution, a regulatory provision. You can't go beyond that. But now with that 50% price hike or tariff hike, that allowed them to, that increases their earning power. But beyond even these numbers, we also see that they had a very strong improvement in terms of their customers and all of that.
Okay.
I'm particularly interested in, if you look at the total number of customers, I think it ticked up by 10%, went up to 183 million users, you know, which is very, very, it's a very excellent number when you look at the fact that they are actually competing with other telcos in the country. Data, what was most interesting in that the average use of data by a customer was about 8.9 gig. 8.9 gig. So that makes me to think, customers actually use that amount of data in Nigeria? Or I mean
I think they do. Everybody does.
I mean, everybody nowadays use. I think because of I remember when we talked about telcos, we mentioned two things: ChatGPT, explosion of social media, Reels. I mean, everybody, WhatsApp stories and all of those. You need data for all of that, and that's why they were able to report 8.9 gig per customer. These are strong fundamentals. These are strong numbers. And this is the reason why we actually mentioned Airtel Africa as one of the biggest. But the other interesting thing is that Airtel Money, you know, they're also in fintech space, very heavily in fintech space. So Airtel Money grew by 21 in terms of the customers, grew by 54.1 million customers. The revenue actually, I think, shot up by over 36%. Okay. Now, and to even think that this is when it is even bundled up with Airtel, and they are planning to actually list in the London Stock Exchange. That's the Airtel Money part, the fintech part of the company is going to be listed in the London Stock Exchange. That means it opens number one, a huge opportunity for investors to come in, as well as it also helps the company to boost its earnings across board. So I think Airtel, for me, these numbers are very impressive, if you ask me, and I expect better numbers. Though we know that operating expenses was actually very high. I think we had operating expenses was 4.3 billion. That went up by 22.93%. If you look at it, CapEx, I mean, if people, the demand for data, the demand, I mean, the quality of data, infrastructure in terms of base transceiver stations, in terms of fiber optic infrastructure, in terms of, there are so many other things that the Airtel needs to improve. I mean, people have been complaining about Airtel network, and of course, if you're in a competitive environment, you want to invest a lot in terms of CapEx. So I still think that, though the guidance, I think they said 1.1 billion in terms of guidance for investment in CapEx this year, or that is FY 2027. But I think it is still a very good play. I mean, you have that even shows that they are ready to really compete and gain more market share. All right.
Now, we actually see, we think our investors will actually look at what we've done. It's a better place to actually invest.
Yes.
Compared to also to MTN. MTN has gone so high. You can actually take Airtel as a second choice.
Yeah, MTN is still has some very serious upside, though, because number one, you know what Nigerians are. The average Nigerian chases dividends paying stocks. Yeah. MTN has already announced a 15 naira. What the current figure is 15 naira as interim dividend. Okay. You can imagine what will be the final dividend will be. So that will still keep the eyes of investors. Though there is a correction, it actually ticked above 900 naira per share. It's come down to 835. I think I still added more to my holdings of MTN. Okay. So yeah, so I mean, it still has a long way to go. Really.
All right, now let's move to the conversation for today.
Yeah.
Now we'll be discussing not just Dangote Refinery IPO. Everybody's really waiting for it. Everybody wants to invest in Dangote Refinery, but we just have to bring out point our torchlight, or to a searchlight rather, to this particular part of the value chain. People don't see this part of the value chain. The logistic part of the value chain. You see, the success of this refinery will be determined heavily by the effectiveness of the logistic companies. They will determine the success of. What it means is that the shareholders in this logistic company will also make money, not investing directly in the Dangote Refinery IPO. Now, let's take a critical overview of these logistic companies. Let's see what they actually do.
I like the fact that you said that you got the picks and shovels strategy.
Yeah.
It's a strategy that I use a lot. I remember when speaking of that same strategy, Nvidia, when I invested in Nvidia, people said, you should invest in the AI names. I said, no. Anyone that wins will buy chips from Nvidia.
Yes.
I mean, and that has been very successful. Nvidia is now worth nearly 6 trillion. Share price has skyrocketed, $235 dollars per share, and that is after what we call a share split.
Okay.
Now, I remember I got into Nvidia when there was no share split. So that 235 is actually 2,200. That's 2,350 if you look at the original share structure. So picks and shovels strategy is very, very important. Now, for logistic company, I want to say this before I start mentioning the companies. The reality is what we are going to be talking about are the companies that are listed. I still believe, if you ask me, that the names that will win are not listed yet. I still believe, and I have my reasons for that. Okay. For starters, Dangote actually front ran all of this, the logistics. They actually got 4,000 buses. No, sorry, I mean to say trucks. Gas-powered trucks. Yeah. To be able to ensure that logistics. So Dangote seems to be interested in retaining a lot of the logistic profits rather than actually outsourcing it. But that aside, we have to also understand that Nigeria still lacks pipeline infrastructure.
Okay.
And so whether, at least in the near future, we'll still be reliant heavily on trucking companies. And if you observe that, the reason I'm saying are not listed is because most of those companies are actually not listed yet.
In the stock exchange.
In the stock exchange. But we could just look at things that are close to, what we call logistics and pseudo-logistic companies that are going to benefit from that particular...
But they'll benefit from the IPO listing.
They benefit from IPO listing in terms of the fact that Dangote is looking to raise $5 billion, which would allow it to expand. It has a modular structure. So it would allow it to expand its capacity, and that means more produce to be.
So investing in this company.
So investing in these companies would allow
directly.
Yeah, the kind of indirectly.
Okay.
So the first name we are going to mention is Red Star Express PLC.
Okay.
So like I said, remember beyond inland, we are also talking about exportation. Remember, Dangote, if we are looking to expand, it does currently 650,000 barrels a day. I mean, you have your opinion though, but according to the NNPC, we don't spend as much, we don't consume as much as that in Nigeria. And so what does that mean? It means that more of it will go out export. So companies that are involved in that, one of which is Red Star Express, will benefit a lot, Now, cargo companies and all of those will actually benefit so much in terms of moving products out. Not just PMS, because most times when we talk about refinery, people think PMS, but there are other components, that actually relate to that. So companies that are actually doing, whether it's express logistics, whether it's a cargo, whether it is any form of logistic handling, will benefit, especially that is directly tied to this. So will benefit, and that's why Red Star Express is one company. And by the way, we might actually wait for a retracement. The company has been pushing. For the first time I saw it, it was in a good buy position, but it's actually
went up.
It's actually gone up.
Smarter investors have gone there.
So it's gone up.
Yeah.
At the first I saw it, it was actually in a good buying position, and I exercised that.
So we should wait for a retracement.
So you could wait for a retracement, but again, I always say don't try to time the market. Dollar cost average. So even for me, I would still re-enter at another position. So Red Star Express PLC would be a name that you could be looking at.
Okay.
Now, this name I'm going to mention might not be very obvious, but ABC Transport. ABC Transport is, I want you to look at it this way. It's not, people think it's just a passenger company that, have buses, but they do haulage services. I remember I've actually patronized them, when we're moving products, palm oil or sachet palm oil. Ultimately, my sister does that. So we're moving those products across the country. We use ABC Transport. I'm not like promoting ABC, by the way, but I mean, they do a lot of haulage.
Okay.
And then one thing you should know is beyond even being participating in moving products, petroleum products, which might not be their cup of tea, but you also want to look at the impact it will have in terms of the certainty in the availability of products.
Okay.
I remember very well, that was about 3 years ago when we used, 3 or 4 years ago when we used ABC Transport. We got a quotation, and in a matter of 2 months, that quotation nearly doubled. Because the price of products, that is, of fuel, diesel, was moving up and down, was just galloping. So, we had to at the point reconsider other options, including using private operators, and of course there is a risk to doing that. But I'm trying to tell you that stability, if you observe, ever since Dangote came full stream, issues about fuel shortage of fuel at pumps have almost disappeared because they provide a stable and predictable source. So that will also affect the margin or impact the margin.
Also listed, right?
Is it ABC Transport, of course, listed. I have so it will impact their margins too. It will impact their margins too, meaning they will have a wider margin. If you have, because when you talk about logistic companies, you're talking about the cost of moving products from one place to another. If you cannot have a predictable pricing, then you cannot, what happens to your margin? Your margin
Let's relate it to the IPO. How does the IPO affect it?
So here is the deal. Remember, we are saying expansion. It's not going to be immediate. It's not going to be like immediately the IPO is done, you have the immediate impact. But I want you to understand that when Dangote does an IPO, they raise that amount of money. They're not going to throw that money away or put it in any other issue. They are going to use it to expand the capacity of the refinery.
Okay.
In market economics, what do we say? More demand, or the higher the supply, the lower the price. Right. If Dangote is doing 650,000 currently. If Dangote is able to increase its production volume to say 1 million or thereabout, it is able to capture more value from the crude oil that we are selling, literally shortchanging ourselves. More value, that value would trickle down the entire value chain. Okay. Do you understand? And will have a downward pressure on the price of fuel. Okay. Yeah. So that's one. So it has a way of affecting those companies too.
The third company.
Then, if you look at the third company, is going to be a company that I think someone has mentioned that on this channel where he talked about Keverton Offshore. Okay. I think someone mentioned that, and we gave our opinion on the comment section. That particular company is going to do well too. Like I said, any company that's involved in, especially offshore activity, and at a stretch, I did not want to bring in most of the airline companies, for example, but at a stretch, it also has a trickle-down effect on offshore companies. But the direct beneficiaries are people that are going to be walking around that ecosystem. We are looking at people that are going to be handling export of products, because, I mean, if Dangote expands its capacity, then most likely it is going to have more to send out, and whoever handles that process is going to benefit
indirectly.
very indirectly. So we are looking at Caverton will do a good position in terms of will sits in the middle of all of this, and so we are looking at a good performance for Caverton, and then we are also looking at a good performance for indirectly though Transcorp.
Okay.
I know it's not very apparent, but these are indirect plays for me. How do I mean by indirect plays? Because if you look at what they're involved in hospitality, they're involved in power, they're involved in, now power relies on what?
Energy.
On energy. So if energy is successful, guess what happens to power? So you don't just look at, like I said, direct beneficiaries and indirect beneficiaries. So to some extent, the smooth logistic play affects Transcorp also. It's not like a pure play for logistics in terms of they don't do so much of haulage services, but they benefit directly from a positive impact in logistics.
Okay.
Because they have a lot of things that they move. Just like I think a few videos ago we talked about FMCGs, consumer staples, and we tried to tie in how the Dangote Refinery listing would affect them. Anything that will expand, any expansion to the Dangote itself
will affect
a
plethora of companies.
A plethora of companies. In fact, I sat down and I was thinking about it. We have said that Dangote is going to be like almost half of 43% of the Nigerian stock market. The ripple effect will be across board. That's why I said the ones that are going to be the major beneficiaries are not listed yet. Because guess what? Yes, they have actually brought in 4,000 trucks. But who told you that a capacity of 1 million barrels per day or 1.2 million if they do a 2x of 1.2 million barrels per day can be handled by the 4,000? No, it can't happen. So it affords an opportunity for more companies, more investors, more entrepreneurs to come in and play in that particular space. Haulage services, trucking companies, even pipeline operators. I am thinking, but though that one is a capital intensive project, but I think in the meantime we can have trucking companies come up.
Let's go to the list again.
So the list, I'm talking Red Star Express, we're looking at ABC Transport, we're looking at Caverton, and we're looking at Transcorp.
What of the NGX itself?
The NGX will benefit.
So
it will look like a tsunami. and I'm not trying to exaggerate by any means.
So you can start investing in the NGX right now?
Yeah. We can start investing in the NGX, and I told you before we got off that we are looking at doing something like that. So we are trying to see what we are bringing something.
That will be Monday.
Okay. We are bringing something up, and then you are going to see that would allow you to trade the same way we trade.
All right,
so we'll talk about more details.
Thank you very much. You have to stick to this channel to be able to get that. In fact, you have to be a subscriber to be able to get that, so that once we drop it, you get the notification. Thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate that. Was a beautiful analysis. I don't think you can get it any other place, in any other environment. You can only do it come from you. Now, on that note, we'll come to the end of today's episode of Clockwise. Now, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and also put on the notification bell on this channel because of the amazing content we bring. And also do not forget that the illiterate of 21st century are not those who did not go to school or those who will not go to school, but are those who have refused to evolve as their environment is evolving. My name is Providence. I'll see you again.